Alright, so 1 year, 10-month update. I want to talk about listening ability, speaking ability, writing ability, reading ability, and how those have improved over the last 2 years since I started. And also I want to talk about Anki, and because I'm at about 8,100-ish cards right now. And I'm going to keep going until I hit 10,000 and maybe beyond, but the effectiveness of it has definitely dropped off, which I think I'm going to talk about at the end. So first off, my speaking ability. I just uploaded a 2-minute video of just put the camera on and whatever comes to my mind I'll say and see what happens. And I wasn't really expecting much, because it was literally the first time I've ever spoken, because I haven't spoken at all in the last 2 years. I had, when I started, I had been studying since 2017, but it was like, I can't even call it studying, because I would study, maybe like 1 day a month, like literally, or I'd watch 1 episode of anime with English subtitles, and look up maybe 1 word a week. It was non-existent. And then I'd watch grammar videos on YouTube and stuff, and things like that. But yeah, I think when I started AJATT style study method in January 2020, at that point in time, I was probably, by JLPT equivalent, I was probably like N5 level at best. And I actually know this for a fact because when I tried to take the N4 practice tests, I literally couldn't read any of the kanji on there. I got nothing right, and I was like, okay. So, and then at about the 6-month mark of AJATT, I was getting like all the N4 stuff right. So, yeah, so listening comprehension, when I first started, even though I had been studying for 3 years or so, the first thing I tried to watch was Toradora, and I couldn't understand anything. It was like 5% comprehension max when I tried to watch that. And it was so uncomfortable for me that I had to put on the English subs. And what I did was I watched, as I was doing RTK, because I did original RTK, like old school AJATT style AJATT. And so I did book 1, and I didn't do book 3, I stopped at book 1. And as I was doing the kanji every day, I would watch anime with English subs and sentence mine, do bilingual sentence mining. And that's pretty much what I did for the first 3 months until RTK was done. And then once RTK was done, then I exchanged the English subtitles for Japanese subtitles, and I started sentence mining in Japanese. And yeah, it was pretty rough at first, but it actually worked. Like, using English subs for the first 3 months was actually not bad. I think that's actually what Matt and Yoka recommended on the MIA site. They recommended to start with English subs if it was really way too hard at the beginning, which I would definitely recommend doing, because otherwise you're just not going to understand anything, and it's going to be really painful for a long time. This way, at least with like the English subtitle bilingual sentence mining, I got to be able to understand a little bit at a time, like a few hundred words, built up a few hundred words, maybe 1,000 words or so, maybe a little more, and then did some take hymns, and yeah, then when I started transitioning out of the English subtitles, it was like everything was very hard to understand. But at the 6-month mark, I felt like I was understanding about half of things, roughly. And I started reading a few manga, like One Piece and Death Note and, not Dragon Ball, I forgot the other one. Oh, maybe it'll come to me later. Anyway, so I read about 3 manga between like the 6-month mark and the year mark, and most of my reading came from just Japanese subtitles on anime. and YouTube was still way too hard for me to understand at that 6 month mark. I tried to watch YouTubers, but for the most part it went over my head. And then, yeah, so I felt like I was understanding about half, when in reality, when I look back on it, it was probably less than half overall. There were, I mean, obviously, of course, there are some shows and things that are easier than others, and some manga that are easier than others, like, for example, One Piece. Doraemon was the third one, and those are easier than Death Note was, just because of the vocabulary and whatever, but, yeah, I was probably actually only understanding maybe 20 or 30% of most things, even though it was kind of like an illusion at the time. I felt like I could understand half. But yeah, I'd say like I just kept going with it and just kept making cards, like 20 cards a day. Like between 10 and 20 cards a day consistently the whole time. And by the time I got to the 1 year mark is when I actually felt like functional. I actually felt like I could follow the plot of most things without a problem, and I started to hit like 90% plus comprehension on some easier shows, slice of life type shows. And I played Final Fantasy X in Japanese, and I could follow everything that was going on. I mean, there were like 2 cutscenes where I got lost, but for the most part, all the instructions and stuff I could read, the menus I could read, the dialogue that was happening in the cutscenes I could understand for the most part. So it was pretty surprising. I was like, wow, like, okay, this is working. And then, yeah, between like that 1 year and 1.5 year mark, I felt like, I mean, I kept improving, slowly, but I kept improving, and I still, and like even now at the 1 year and 10 month mark, it's kind of like the same thing where I feel like I can understand enough to follow the plot of things for sure, and some things get to like 95% plus comprehension, and I'm like, wow. And then, and also I've been reading like a lot of like coronavirus news articles consistently for the past few months, and those have become like very, very easy to understand now. But like if I go to like a different topic in the news, it becomes very difficult because of all those other words that I don't know. So it always depends. It always varies. It's never like, okay, I'm at 90% plus, now everything I watch is easy. It's like, no, it doesn't work that way. There's always going to be things that are very difficult, even at the almost 2 year mark. And that's just the way it is. So I'm just going to keep chipping away at it, keep learning new things, and yeah. And yeah, in terms of reading, I don't like reading novels so much, so like everything I read is pretty much just Japanese subtitles on anime or drama or YouTube, because YouTubers sub their videos. So that's been a big help in terms of learning new words and in terms of helping comprehension. And yeah, so my reading ability just keeps going up. I think if I were to open like a light novel, it would be very hard for me because I just haven't had much experience with that at all. But yeah, my reading ability is okay. Writing ability, I used to write, like right at the beginning on Hello Talk, I would practice writing. And it wasn't very good, and I'd make a lot of mistakes, and I couldn't really say much of anything. And yeah, and now at the year and 10 month mark, I just started writing again on Hello Talk, and when I go to write, it's like so many things come out, and I'm like, how do I know how to say this stuff? So it's pretty insane how that actually works. But like my writing just has improved without writing for so long. It's weird, but there's still like a few mistakes. The same thing with like, I mean, I don't want to say it's the same thing with my speaking because my speaking is really, really limited. Like the amount I can understand is just so much more than what I can say, which is sad. So, but I'm sure it'll get better if I start doing conversation practice because I've literally done like 0 conversation practice. So maybe I'll try italki or something like that in the future. Yeah, and as far as Anki goes, like I said at the beginning, I think I'm almost at like, yeah, 8,100, a little bit over 8,100 cards now. And my problem with Anki is that Anki is like, at the beginning, you need to use it to memorize vocabulary, so that you can understand your immersion, because otherwise you'll just be totally lost the whole time. So I think Anki is very beneficial at the beginning, and then once you get to like intermediate-ish stage, it starts to, I mean, it's still useful, but it's like it has diminishing returns, because it's like the cards that you make at the beginning, like 2 years later, they're gonna have like 4-year intervals or something. I don't even know, because I've deleted so many cards now that it's like, but because it's like so many cards were getting to like the 2.4-year interval mark, and it's just like, if they're not going to come up in 2.4 years, like what's the point of this? So, and what I found was, the cards that kept coming up in Anki, I mean, sometimes they helped reinforce, but usually the best way I would recognize words is just when they kept coming up in immersion, and that was it. That was the only thing that I feel like really works. I mean, Anki does work, but it's like once you get up to so many thousands of cards, not only are your reviews going to be way too long per day, like my reviews per day now are only like 35 minutes because I've deleted that many cards. Like I've literally deleted like close to my first 7,000 cards I've deleted, so I just have like 1,000 running now. And I thought I'd notice like a giant drop in ability by doing that, but I haven't really noticed anything. I mean, yeah, I've had to go back and relearn a few words, remake a few cards, a few old cards I've had to remake, which sucks, but I think it's just part of the process. Like, whether you have an Anki card for something or not, that's not what's going to retain that information. Like, what's going to retain that word for you is if it comes up enough in your immersion, and that's it. And that's what I've found personally. And so I wouldn't really stress about doing, more than 30 minutes of Anki a day. It's just not that beneficial, especially after the 1 year mark, after the 1.5 year mark. I feel like it's really limited. And also, another thing I feel like is really limited is like the monolingual transition. Like, a lot of people stress how important the monolingual transition is, but in my opinion, it's really not that important, because, yeah, there are a lot of definitions that are much better in Japanese than in a bilingual dictionary, but for the most part, you don't acquire language when you read a dictionary definition. And if you don't know the synonym for something, or how a native would say it exactly, then looking it up in a dictionary and trying to memorize another definition is really ineffective. It's not actually going to help you acquire those other words that you look up in the dictionary, and it's just not that effective. I don't think anything is really going to help you acquire more words other than immersion, reading a lot and listening a lot, and that's it. So I think like what I do is whenever I find a good monolingual definition, I use it. For nouns, I never use it because it's pointless to me. I would just use the English definition. And for adjectives and verbs and things like that, I mean, it can be useful. Some monolingual definitions are much better than the English ones, as I said. And in those cases, I try to make monolingual cards as much as possible, but I mean, I just don't stress about it. If I find a great definition in Jisho, I'll just use the Jisho one. Like, it's not that big of a deal to me, because dictionaries are not the end-all, be-all of be-all, end-all, whatever, of of language acquisition. It just doesn't work that way. So yeah, that's my little rant, I guess, on Anki and monolingual dictionaries. And yeah, I guess that's it. So peace.